All right, I guess it's time to get started. All right, so I'm Brian Ford. I'm from Google. I work on AngularJS, but right now I'm going to be talking about Karma, our JavaScript test runner. So what is Karma? There's probably a good chance that you have some idea of what it is since you're here for this talk. But Karma is a test runner that uses real browsers to run JavaScript tests, and it reports them in your console. So what happens is when you run Karma, it loads up some configuration, and then it starts this web server, and then you can have whichever browsers you want hook into it, and then Karma will take care of running the tests from there. So this is really cool because you can actually find like real browser quirks much quicker than if you had run it in some sort of simulated environment. So Karma, you can use it in a variety of ways. You can run it on your CI server, you can run it locally for development, but really it's kind of designed around this test-driven development flow where you write tests as you write your app, or if you're really hardcore, you write the tests before you even write the features of your app. And we think that writing tests this way and developing this way means that you can have this really, really fast feedback loop. So you can iterate much faster and you can be a lot more confident that the code that you're writing actually works. The kind of difficult question, though, is can we make test-driven development actually fun? So it can get kind of tedious going back and forth between tests and your actual code. And so I think one of the things that's interesting about Karma is that it makes testing so easy that it's actually fun. It's actually really reassuring to see this feedback very quickly between I wrote some code, I tested it, I know that it works, now I can move on to the next thing. So there's really only a few things that you need in order to get started with Karma. So you need Node.js, you install it through npm, and then you need a config file. And Karma will actually generate a config file for you. So it's really super easy. There are instructions on the Karma site, so I won't belabor that point. So the general flow, you write a test, then you implement it, and then you check the results of the tests. You don't have to run the tests again. One of the cool things about Karma is that it'll watch your files and it'll automatically rerun the tests when you make changes. All right, so let's actually look at how you would do this. Let's test some JavaScript first. So like a true test-driven development advocee, I've written here some tests for an add function. This is going to test all of my programming abilities here in order to do it. Let's start up Karma first, though. So you notice here, Karma can actually start Chrome, and then it gives me this feedback right here. So it's running each of these tests, it's telling me the failure, it's giving me line numbers, it's giving me all this useful information. So we can actually just take Chrome and send it to the background, and then let's start making changes here. So I'm just going to save a couple of times. If you see here on the bottom, you should see, oops, there you go. So you can see every time I'm saving, it's just automatically rerunning it. And so the typical kind of workflow we have is you have your editor or your tool of choice, and then you have Karma somewhere right below it. So you can quickly see every time that you're making a change what the effect of it is. So let's start implementing add. This is going to be tough. A plus B. All right, cool. So now we have two tests passing. If A or B is not of numerical type, then we want to throw an exception. So type of A as number and type of B as number. Then we return the result. Otherwise, let's throw an error. Nope, and there we go. We can see that that works. So let's take a look at the tests now, just a little bit. So if you notice, we have these blocks of describe and it. So you can write your tests in a variety of ways with Karma. Karma is really just a runner. and there are many different assertion libraries that you can use that kind of tell you how these tests are set up. So the one that we like to use is Jasmine, and so you kind of have, this is a suite of tests described, so I'm describing this add function, and then it is kind of a specific unit test in there. So it should add 2 numbers, it should add negative numbers, and it should throw if you pass in non-numbers. Then inside of these tests we have expect and then to be or expect to throw. There's a lot more, there are a lot more APIs in Jasmine, as you can see on their official documentation. But you don't have to choose Jasmine. If you have a favorite, like QUnit or something else, you can use that, and that's just fine as well. So that was pretty easy. Let's also see how we can test real DOM APIs as well. So let's say you have this function make red, and what it does is it just changes the style of some DOM element. So this is one of the things that's kind of tricky to test outside of real browsers, right? So by actually running this inside of a browser, if there was some weird quirk, like you might expect to happen in an old version of IE or an old version of many different browsers, you could catch it very quickly. So this is kind of an easy example. I'll just set the style of this to red, and we can run it, and it's very fast. Notice that every time I'm saving, it's almost instant. And so that's one of the cool things, I think, about having these sort of tools, is that your tests are not, it's not something like, oh, I'll write this up and then I'll run the tests and then I'll go take a coffee break. No, you can run the tests right then every single time that you save. And kind of the real benefit of that is you know as soon as you introduce a bug, or you know as soon as something is failing. All right, so we can do more than just test JavaScript, though. So CoffeeScript, if you're unfamiliar with it, is a language that compiles to JavaScript. And so Karma has really good support built in for automatically watching and recompiling CoffeeScript on the fly. So let me switch over to a different set of files here. So CoffeeScript is not my native tongue, actually. So I have a little bit of a hard time explaining this, but CoffeeScript introduces a class keyword that kind of constructs up the JavaScript prototype chain. So here we have some CoffeeScript application, and then we have some tests in here. And this is actually also using Jasmine, just the syntax is a little bit weird because it's CoffeeScript. So let me switch directories and we'll start running the tests. All right, there you go. So again, every time we save, it's refreshing it and it's running it. It's running the CoffeeScript preprocessor to generate JavaScript that actually gets run in the browser. So this is really helpful. Karma should be useful with whatever sort of development tools that you want. So the CoffeeScript example is very simple. There's support for a variety of other tools, including TypeScript, ClojureScript, Dart, and many, many more. And you can even extend it with your own plugin. So besides just compile to JS languages for plugins, you can also get different reporters. So we saw one reporter that ships with Karma that reports the different things in the command line. But you can imagine maybe you want the nice OS X notifications up in the side. Maybe you want to send out an email from your CI server as tests fail. Or maybe you have like an IRC channel that you like to hang out in, and you'd like to have the results reported there. You can do all sorts of crazy things. So there's also other assertion libraries. So a couple examples, chai, junit. You could write your own assertion library and have Karma automatically loaded up for you. And then finally, you noticed we're running our own Chrome locally. If you're running on a Unix-based system, it's difficult to test things like Internet Explorer or even Chrome or Firefox in other environments. And so there are some of these services like BrowserStack and Sauce Labs that'll spin up a VM with these different browsers. And there are plugins with Karma, so you can kind of seamlessly say, Karma, run all these tests. Karma will connect to these services. These services will then in turn start up a bunch of VMs, and you'll run all the tests in parallel, and you'll know that everything works even on IE 7 or whatever version of IE you have to support. And so that's really cool. There are actually over 100 of these different plugins on NPM. So you can probably find support for whatever other tools that you need. And if not, you have lots and lots of code that you can look to figure out how to add support for anything that you want. Okay, so we actually, well, I shouldn't say we, Vojta, a guy that also works on Angular, he wrote Karma specifically so that way we could have this kind of great setup environment for Angular. So incidentally, AngularJS applications have really, really good support for Karma. So let's see an example of how you would test an AngularJS application with Karma. Okay, so again, we have an implementation on the left. Let me close this sidebar so you guys can see. And then we have some tests on the right. So if you're new to Angular, Angular is kind of a MVC-like paradigm. It has controllers, and controllers are essentially these functions that expose different things to your application. So I have here kind of a hello world application, but it's an internationalized hello world. So what happens is initially it sets the greeting to loading. It has this translations map that it loads out of a JSON file. And when this successfully loads, it sets the translation to English. And it also exposes on scope, this is a special Angular thing, it exposes the ability to change the translation at any time. So let's run this test again. Okay, so they all pass. Let's take a look at how the tests are actually written, and let's also monkey around with it and see if we can get it to fail a little bit. So here we keep a reference to controller and scope, and before each test, we are reloading this module, myapp, that matches this, and so this is interesting because Angular kind of by default has absolutely no global state. You need to explicitly tell it when you want to load something. And so every single test is run in isolation. So you don't get these kind of bizarre cases where running tests in one order versus another, or running part of the test suite versus the full test suite gives you different results. Every time you're getting fresh instances of everything. So AngularJS uses dependency injection. So again, before each test, we're going to inject these different utilities that the framework provides. Here we're mocking out a backend. So if you see here, we're making this HTTP request to translations.json. Here we're saying, aha, when you make this request, respond with this object. So this is really cool. You don't have to actually launch up a server in order to unit test this. And then below, we're instantiating a scope and a controller that uses this scope. Right? Then below, as you might expect, you have the different assertions that we've seen below. So initially, we expect it to be loading. Then we have a describe block nested inside of our first describe block. This is something that you can do if you use Jasmine. Jasmine lets you can kind of nest these different things, and then just at the end you have your different it blocks. So what this is going to do then is, before every single test in this describe block, we'll set up these different things, And then in this block, we're going to flush the HTTP requests. So this is simulating the server finally fulfilling this request. So after the server comes back, we expect to be able to have the greeting be equal to hello, and then also we can translate it to French, and the greeting should be bonjour. So let's see what happens if, for instance, we disable this, right? So now these two tests are failing. It's expecting loading to be hello, and so we can pretty easily narrow down and say, well, the HTTP request never finished. Or the correct behavior wasn't set on the scope when it finished. So that's perhaps more interesting if you're used to Angular and you've seen these different things. But if you're not developing with Angular, there are different plugins that support just a wide variety of different JavaScript frameworks, from Backbone, Component, jQuery, or even Ember. And again, you're easily able to extend it yourself with whatever new framework or whatever new library interests you. Okay, so we said that Karma is a tool that we wrote for Angular, and we really mean it. So AngularJS itself has about 2,400 tests that Karma can run, and this is actually really cool. So we use Grunt to kind of do a couple other tasks, but behind the scenes, Grunt is just going to run Angular. So here we have Chrome startup, and then at the bottom you can see, look at that, it just races through these tests. So this takes about maybe 10 seconds. Oh, it's fast today. I guess it's somewhere between 8 and 10 seconds to run all of the tests for Angular. And we have a lot of them. So that's pretty impressive, I think. But if I'm working on some sort of specific feature, like let's say I want to just work on this thing called ngIf. So maybe I just want to work on this. I don't want to have to rerun all of the tests every time, right? It takes a while to get to the tests that are actually relevant, and although it's only 10 seconds, it's much better if it's just half a second or a tenth of a second. So we have this feature where we can kind of block out certain parts of the test and say, just worry about these for now. So if you prefix one of these describe blocks with a D, you can hit save, and if you see down below, we're only running the 11 tests that occur inside of here. So now I can, maybe here I forget to do some cleanup work. Aha, so one of the tests fails, right? And you can see how that's much better, right? Instead of the 8 seconds, it's just a single second. So again, we keep this really, really tight feedback loop. You know immediately when you're developing if a change that you've made is harmful, and because that sort of change is fresh in your mind, you can immediately go back and fix it. Whereas, if your tests take, 10 seconds or 10 minutes or 10 hours or something to test, it's really easy to completely forget what you were doing and, be off trying to fix a different problem. All right, and so again, all of this source code is on the AngularJS repo, and I think it's a great source of inspiration, and it also is some good example code for how would I set up these tests, how do I build this up and tear this down, and how do I separate things out so that I can test really just the focused behavior of some certain thing. Okay, so besides the ddescribe thing that I showed you, there's also it, which does the same thing, but it just runs one test instead of the kind of blocks. So I think this is also, it's useful when you want to work on a specific component, but I think it can also be useful when, for instance, you're refactoring and you rename something and you want to just kind of systematically go through and make all of the tests green, and you don't want your console just lit up with 1,000 errors. So it's a useful feature. So kind of in summary here, Karma is about keeping testing fast. And by keeping it fast, we think it's just much more enjoyable. You get just a bunch of productivity benefits, and in general, it's just a much less frustrating experience. So it uses real browsers. I was showing Chrome off most of the time, but it's trivial to also launch Firefox, Opera, Safari, just whatever else you want. You can even hook up your phone, for instance, and all you have to do is point it at this URL. So you could be testing mobile browsers as well. And then finally, it's extensible. The proof is there. There's 100 or so plugins already out there that are pretty actively maintained, and so there's a good community of developers using Karma. And if you want to bring in any other technology into your stack, there's probably already good support for it there. If not, you can add it. So it looks like I have about 9 minutes or so. Are there any questions? Yes, in the blue. Sorry, for what? Ah, good question. Yes, I was actually supposed to mention this. The question was, is there a plugin for code coverage? And yes, Karma has good support for code coverage. I think there's it ships with this feature now, right? Or it's a plugin? Yes, there's a plugin that does code coverage. Is it Istanbul? Is that the one? Yeah. Yeah, there's a plugin called Istanbul that does this. I haven't looked into it myself too much, but it seems awesome. So yes, you can get code coverage as well from Karma. Yes? Sure. You want to see just from the command line, or? So let me, perhaps it wasn't too easy to see this. So how do you start Karma? Let's go back here to this example. So Karma is just a command line tool. There's also support for it in WebStorm, so you can have the results reported there. I assume some other IDEs also have support for it, so if command line tools aren't really your cup of tea, you can run it otherwise as well. But generally, you just run Karma, start, and then you give it a config file. And the config file is super simple. The config file is JavaScript itself. So as a web developer, it should be pretty intuitive, right? So it exports this configuration, and you set these different options in here, things like which files do I want to include? Are there any files I want to exclude? Which reporter do I want to run? Things like what's the output like? Do I want to automatically refresh these tests as I was showing? And there are other options as well, and you can check the docs online to see more of that. Does that answer your question? All right, very good. Any other questions? Yes, in front. Is there a plugin for Maven? I do not know, but let's see how good the internet connection is here. npm search. If the answer is no, then that could be a fun activity for this evening. Aha, so it looks like there are some grunt tasks as well that might be helpful. Yes. Okay. Maybe is the answer. I don't know. I don't know personally. There is one. What is it called? Okay, there's one. There is a Karma Maven plugin, apparently. I don't know much about it, but you should find the gentleman that knows more and ask him, perhaps. Yes?
How would you debug unit tests?
Very good. How would you debug unit tests? So there are a couple different ways that you can do this. Karma actually brings up this window here where you can kind of inspect and see. Oh, this is a window from one that I already closed. Let's see here. So you can actually just drop little debugger statements in here. Sometimes I do this, and this will stop it. No browser captured. All right, let's restart it. And then if you actually bring this up, hit save. There you go. So yeah, you can step through the code this way then if you'd like to. I mean, you can use Chrome DevTools as well, works just fine with it. So you can set breakpoints in here. You can step through it. Generally, that's my flow. I know that there are a variety of other tools that you can use with there, but that's my approach. And over here. A very good question. So the question was, can you use, for instance, JavaScript for the tests, but CoffeeScript for the app, or vice versa? Can I write the tests with CoffeeScript and have the app in JavaScript? And the answer is yes, you can mix them. So you just have to tell Karma, I want to watch both CoffeeScript files and JavaScript files, and it'll load them all up and do the right thing. Excellent question. Okay, that looks like it's about it. Thank you all for showing up. I'll be around if you have other questions. Otherwise, on Twitter, I'm Brian T. Ford, so feel free to digitally ask me questions as well. So thank you.